We've created something called the Mammoth beat organ, which is a semi-autonomous modular mechanical musical instrument. We knew that our debut performance was going to be at Supersonic Festival, so we put in an Arts Council application and were successful. So it started in earnest once we got that, really. We did a research period at the Horniman Museum, looking at their musical instrument collection and the library.
There were various books about instrument building, and in particular one of the most useful books, which I didn't know would really have existed, was a book of patents for mechanical automata from around the turn of the last century. Things like a player piano, which would also sync up with a gramophone player which had vocals on it, so that you could have kind of singing coming from a record player and piano roll playing the piano.
We also had access to their systems to have a look at documents and photographs of various instruments and technologies that they have in the wider collection, which isn't normally on public display.
The drive shaft, which is central to the whole workings of the machine, was actually one of the last things that we ended up getting to work properly. We spent a long time using various bits from the back of a hearse and the rollers out of the back of a hearse and a motor from a treadmill, which is still part of the machine. We kind of thought there must be something that exists which is about the right thing that we need already. What I didn't realise is that eBay has a whole separate section for industrial machinery and agricultural machinery. So we both independently ended up on the same page for an agricultural manufacturer which makes the rollers for conveyor belts. And so yeah, and that was based in the West Midlands.
Yeah, based in the Black Country, and got in touch with them, and as ever with doing this sort of stuff, they didn't understand at all what we wanted to do with it or why we would need a roller, but Julie made us one. That was a moment of relief right near the end.
We also found that actually going into a shop and looking at what's on the shelf often gives you an answer, because most of the time we're repurposing something for a use it's not intended for. So the valves which distribute air to the different organ pipes are ball cock valves from the back of toilets, and it took weeks of work really first to try and use parts from an inside of an accordion and all kinds of different valves and different ways of making an airtight chamber with which to house all these valves and things. And in the end it turned out, you know, as is often the case, there's something that exists that does this job already, but you can't search for it directly because it's something that it's a different purpose that it's intended for. So that eventually, trawling around various DIY shops and just looking what was on the shelves, we managed to find something that would work for the purpose that we needed it for.
I mean, literally cycling around shops in Malvern and blowing into ballcocks to see if air came out when they were closed or not.
The thing that we used for the bellows, we prototyped various different approaches to that, so using various corrugated tubes or using actual accordion bellows. Eventually we settled on a pair of toilet plungers to use for that, which worked really well in the first week or so of testing, and then the night before we were supposed to debut the machine we realised they were torn all along the seams. And it turns out that toilet plungers aren't designed to pump air relentlessly for 40 minutes at a time at 140 beats per minute.
We really had to nail how these things worked and make sure they didn't fall apart, which for a while they did. Like it unscrewed itself regularly, just sort of fell apart. Boxes were getting expanded at the time, and cracking noises were occurring. So we really had to make the time to fully build it properly.
Part of what's exciting about this project really is that although we've built a machine which works now, it feels like this is really the beginning of the project, because now you can keep developing all the different parts of it and keep either improving things or adding new parts. You sort of realise with this kind of system, similar to all the previous projects I've done, that you know, once you've got the kind of basics up and running, it suggests new things that you can add to it, and we kind of designed the system like that really, so that it would be kind of open-ended and we can keep adding different parts and different functions to it. The fun part really has been thinking about how then you can actually create rhythms with these different devices and things. I mean, it's been quite intense at times because we're both very busy with other projects, and we've ended up working a lot of long days on the project to get it finished.
When you're commissioned, as I am sometimes, to make new musical instruments for people, you realise that when you give them that instrument, that is a tiny part of what's involved in them doing anything interesting with that instrument. That bit takes years and years of learning potentially. We only managed to squeeze in one rehearsal before playing our first gig. We recorded some stuff for a release that's coming out on Front and Follow, and that is pretty much the sum total of the time we've had actually using the machine. But we still have got a lot to build really to make the most of what the core machine can do.
I think I would be slightly reluctant to hand it over to someone else to play. It's slightly dangerous, and there are various parts where you could trap your fingers in the kind of gears and things like that. You know, I think you'd have to really know what you're doing to not injure yourself with it.
It's an interesting question why we might build something like this, because it's heavy, cumbersome. It literally fills my van to the brim, and then, should we just go and make a quick tune on the Mammoth beat organ? You know, there's an element of, we've got quite a lot to actually set up and drag out into the room and stuff if we're going to do that. But it just takes us out of other ways of making music. I think that's a real distinction with this instrument, is that it can go so wildly in different directions. And we don't know where that's going to lead really yet. And that's dead exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, you can do anything.